everybody, this is Talky for another Shadowverse video, which is the second episode of Tournament Tuesday. This week, we'll be covering a match from the Rage Shadowverse Pro League, opposing Adoji and Tatsuno, playing for the Nagoya Baby Star and the Lebonga Sapporo. Before we get into the match, let's take a quick look at the deck lists. Adoji was on PDK Dragoncraft, which is a deck with a lot of low-cost followers to use Prime Dragon Keeper and control the board, and a few big Storm finishers. This deck wants to chip in early and then finish the game with the direct damage. On the other hand, Tatsuno is on mid-range Shadowcraft. He's still playing the usual Hector package, but now also relies on Arcus to create ghosts he can use to get some storm damage. The Arcus-Hector combo also helps a lot finish off your opponent once he's around 10 life points. One of the problems of Shadowcraft is that it doesn't have a reliable way to deal the first 10 damage before it can finish off with Hector and Arcus. In exchange, it gets very good board control and very sticky threats like Corpse Lord of Woe. Then, let's move on to the mulligans. Adoji was on the play, had a PDK, Aji the Haka, and a Dragon Aficionado. He decided to mulligan all three to hope for better curve and in particular to get a 2-drop. What's really interesting is that even though the deck is named Prime Dragon Keeper, you can afford to mulligan the card. What's important is to get on the board early to pressure your opponent, which then allows Prime Dragon Keeper to take over the game. On the other side, Tatsuno was gifted with the presence of 3 Pro-Hearted Singer in his hand, but he's looking for a curve and for early interaction like Zombie Party, and therefore he also mulliganed all of them, which means we get full RNG hands. So let's start by watching the first few turns in Fast Forward. Both players mainly played on curve. The interesting decision coming from Adoji was whether to play Dragon Oracle or Ayala on turn 2. In the end, he decided to go for Ayala, putting more weight into the early pressure and the damage he could get through than the ramp. He was rewarded as the only turn to play that Tatsuno had was Lord Death Skull, which cannot trade with either of the 2-2 Adoji presented in his turn 2 and 3. This means that, on his turn 4, Adoji could safely continue developing his board while destroying the Lord Death Skull and put Tatsuno in a very precarious spot. This Corpse Lord of Woe from Tatsuno was deemed important enough by Adoji to trade into him, losing 2.5 cards in the process. Then, Tatsuno's turn 5 is where it starts to get really interesting. On his turn 5, Tatsuno plays a Pearl-Hearted Singer, draws a Atrocious Curse, but decides to not use it. He decides to keep it 3-3, therefore pressuring Adoji's lifestyle and board, but ends up not being able to use all his mana, which is a pretty big problem at this stage of the game. Then we get to Adoji's turn 6, which I think is the most interesting turn in the whole match. Adoji decides to go face with his Fire Drake Whelp and to not evolve Feline to deal the 1 damage needed to kill the Pearl-Hearted Singer. Adoji values the single point of damage from the Fire Drake Whelp more than his own 3 life points. I feel like this is mainly because he has Phoenix Rider Aina in hand and wants to get as much damage through as possible before he drops it. But this attack is really very interesting. I think I would not have done it and I would have likely be wrong. So please watch the game state once more. I feel like this was really a very interesting turn where Adoji knew how much damage he needed to win and I think had a very few specific targets in mind. Anyways, we can move on to Tatsuno's turn 6. On his turn 6, he's still not able to deploy all his 7 mana legendaries, and he still is in survival mode. His goal at the moment is just to survive long enough to be able to close out the game with Arcus. He has double Dragon Lord Hector, he has 7 cards and Demon Eater. He will win the game in the long run. After dealing 3 damage to Aruji's face with his Pure Hearted Singer, he decides to draw 3 cards for 2 mana, sends to Demon Eater, and finds the Belenus that will allow him to clear the full opposing board. If he didn't draw Belenus here, it would have been a little bit rough, but he knew what kind of cards he had left in his deck. With 3 7-mana legendaries in his hand, he was very likely to draw another 1 or 2 drop, which would allow him to go for Creature, Evolve, Strasse's Curse. With 2 Phoenix Driver Aina, Aruji's has a very clear game plan here. It's to go face and race. Phoenix Rider Aina is not a good card for board control or for trading. It's a card made to go face. So he uses the strength to put Tatsuno down to 11, knowing he has a Force of the Dragonute and another Aina in hand, which means Tatsuno is virtually at about 6 life points. Conveniently enough, 6 is the amount of damage a Azidahaka can deal in 1 turn. While Aruji's plan is now very clear, Tatsuno is in a much more precarious position. With the Evolve on Aina, Tatsuno realizes Aruji is dead set on racing here. Tatsuno definitely cannot afford to be playing Arcus here, which means he has to handle the 5-7 with his Little Stealer. Then Tatsuno, now understanding Aruji's plan really well, is willing to do everything to protect his life total. This means playing an Aisha to attack the Phylan, knowing the Aisha will die to a 2-mana spell from Aruji. Tatsuno, even though he knows this play will be very tempo negative, doesn't really have a choice here. This means we can move back to Aruji, who still has his second Aina in hand and will slam it and will go face. As we had seen in the past few turns, Aruji was playing to his outs. He realized the way he would be winning this game would be to draw an Azidahaka, and he played to it. He drew it, but if he hadn't pushed through this 1 damage with the Fire Drake earlier, this Azidahaka draw would amount to nothing. It's really important to notice this kind of little plays that truly dictate the result of a whole game. Now that Aruji has Azidahaka, the next few turns will be a bit easier. Let's see how Tatsuno plays against it. He has an Hector, which means he can trade into the Aina here and push through some face damage. He puts Aruji down to 8, but Aruji, having Force of the Dragonute as well as Fill-In Spell, can clear the whole board and still be lethal through the Everdark Strix. As we see Tatsuno's hand on turn 9, well, we know he's dead. There is nothing he can do against Azidahaka. But even though there is nothing he can do, he doesn't know his opponent has Azidahaka. So what is the right play in that situation? Since winning 1 life doesn't do anything, you don't really want to be playing the Strix, and as playing Arcus sets you up for lethal on turn 10 by playing Everdark Strix and using the 3 ghosts with the Hector buff to win, Arcus Go is definitely the right play. Had he been at 6, I do think you want to go for Strix to gain the 1 life point that saves you against Azidahaka. You have Thrust's Curse in hand, which means that if your opponent doesn't have another Storm card on his turn 11, you will be able to take the game. The fact that Tatsuno was at 5 and not 6 life point entirely decided the result of this game. This was made possible by Aruji's attack with the Fire Drake earlier. So next time you play PDK Dragon, pay attention to every single point of damage you can push through. Aruji's traded 3 of his life for 1 damage, but this damage is the play that made him win. So this will be it for this week's episode of Tournament Tuesday. I hope you liked this match and it helped you become a better Shadowverse player. See you tomorrow for another Shadowverse video.